Okay. So I only have 11 of you here, but you're on time, so I'm going to go ahead and just start. So just to let you know a little bit about myself, my name is Elisabeth Lore. I got my PhD here at UC Davis in comparative literature in 2015, and I majored in, in comparative literature, you had to choose 3 literatures. So I specialized in Caribbean literature, Chicanics literature, French literature, and what I called multilingual literature, where it means that an author is using more than one language. I also did a master's degree at San Francisco State in the same field. I did it in comparative literature. And there I wrote my dissertation on code switching in French and English Caribbean literature. And yeah, so that's basically about it took me, I would say our program takes a long time because we have a lot that we have to study because we are comparing things from different fields. And so it took me almost 9 years to do my PhD. I don't expect that to happen to everybody. I also had some things, some family issues came up. And one thing that I learned doing a PhD program is that life does not stop. It just keeps going, and things will happen to interrupt your studies. And you just have to find a way to get around those things. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can start the presentation. I have a lot to share with you. And so I hope that there's a few things that I am going to go a little faster. And I'll explain that in just a second. Okay, let me put this. Oops. Okay, so I've already shared this about me. So our agenda, what are we going to cover in this workshop? So we're going to spend a little time talking about finding your topic, because there were a few of you who were really asking about this. We will also talk about writing your prospectus. And actually, before we talk about that one, I actually forgot to switch. So we're going to spend a large amount of time on writing your prospectus. Structuring your thesis and dissertation, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because the other workshops that happened today, we're talking a lot about this, this topic. And so we're going to just cover it briefly. Choosing and communicating with your committee, that's actually going to be the second thing we talk about, because you need to do this before writing your perspective. We are going to spend quite a bit of time talking about that because that was something quite a few of you were asking about. Defending your thesis or dissertation, we're not going to talk about this very much because basically not every department has one of these, and I'll explain when we get there. Okay, and then the last one is taking care of yourself, because this is when you take care of yourself, you have a much better chance of succeeding than if you kind of put your own needs aside. That's usually a recipe for disaster. Okay, so let's start by talking about how to find your topic. So some of you have just started your program. Some of you have already been writing your dissertations or theses. So for some of you, this will be something you've already done. So I wanted to start with this quote by Leila Gifty Akita. She says, every beginner possesses a great potential to be an expert in his or her chosen field. And I wanted to start with this because I wanted to remind you that your departments chose you because they saw you having potential. They saw the potential in you when they admitted you into their programs. And so I want you to remember that as you go through this process of writing a thesis or writing a dissertation, because sometimes it can feel really stressful, but you need to remember that you have the abilities and potential to do this. That's why they chose you. All right, so the first thing you want to think about in deciding about a topic or finding that topic is to start thinking potential topics from the beginning of your program. Now, most of you, if not all of you, came into your programs with some idea of what you wanted to study. And so what you want to do is kind of keep this one in mind and start with that one. Second, the thing you want to do is make sure you try to take courses that not only focus in on your interests and the topic that you started off being interested in, but expand your knowledge of that topic through some of the courses that that you can take. So, for instance, I wanted to study post-colonial literature at the time when I first entered into my PhD program. Actually, probably in both programs. And unfortunately for me, there were not a lot of post-colonial literature classes being offered during the time I was taking my coursework. But I ended up taking some courses in critical theory and discovering that they were going to be very useful to what I wanted to study in the future. So you want to take classes that focus on the topic you're interested in, but also look at what other topics might expand your knowledge of the area of study that you want to look at. All right, the third one, this is just a little one that I recommend having some small notebook or an app on your phone where you can type ideas that come up. I started doing this early on, and by the time I wrote my prospectus, I had quite a few ideas to bounce off of in order to refine my topic. And so I know most of you probably use your phones more than using written notebooks, but either one of them works. I don't recommend trying to keep that sort of thing on a laptop or a tablet because you want this thing to be with you everywhere you go, because you never know when the ideas will pop up. And the fourth that helps in finding your topic is to ask lots of questions. So that seems pretty obvious. But asking questions in various ways. So one of the things that I highly recommend is that as you're taking courses and you find certain articles that seem like they might be really useful to the direction you'd like to go in your research, make sure to annotate those articles pretty well. Make sure you look for holes in the arguments by the writers, and make sure you write a little summary at the end of the article so you don't have to reread the entire thing when you are starting to put your research materials together. And then also look for places where you disagree. Oftentimes disagreeing, or if you see that, hey, this author is right about this thing, but I think they missed this point, and this seems like a pretty important thing that we need to talk about. So those are some of the things that you want to do when trying to think of a topic. Questions too, obviously, during your classes will be helpful, and going to your professors and having conversations with them, asking them a lot of questions about their own research is helpful. So I think this one, yeah, so as often as possible, choose courses and paper topic about things that you really enjoy learning about. So you will have courses that you have to take because they're required for your program. But then also when you have a choice, try to make sure you choose things that are really interesting to you, because you're more likely to get ideas from those than from the ones that you're not that interested in. And writing papers on the potential topic. One of the reasons I highly recommend doing this is because when I was doing my PhD, there was a grad student who managed to write his dissertation in about 6 months. And the reason he was able to do it so quickly is that he had written a few papers on his topic really early on in his program. And so when it came to writing his dissertation, he already had a lot of stuff written. And so he was able to expand on those and turn them into chapters. And so he finished quite quickly. So this is one of the things that I think could be quite useful. All right. So when you're ready to make this decision, about what topic. One of the things you want to do is make sure that you choose something that's unique enough to be interesting, not just to you, but to your committee and other people in your field. But you also want to make sure that you don't choose something that's so unique that you have trouble finding sources to support your idea. So one of the things that happened to me is I wanted to look at mediating literature, and it was something that I was fascinated with, um, and had started seeing it in novels written by um, uh, authors who either were immigrants or who were children of immigrants. And I really wanted to look at how they were trying to mediate the relationships between people in two different cultures. And I didn't want to talk about reconciliation because to me, reconciliation means that you've had a good relationship and now you have to go back to that place of having a good relationship, like something happened in there. And what I was looking at were situations where there's never been a good relationship. So the mediation seemed um, more important to me. However, that particular topic, it was very hard to find resources for mediating literature because it was something brand new from what I could see, or at least I think I was only able to find like one book that was looking at mediation in literature. So I ended up having to talk about reconciliation and then show why my topic was different. So you want to be careful that you don't end up with a topic that doesn't have a lot of resources to support you. Because this also can make it take a lot longer for you to finish. And again, you always want to remember that the end goal is to finish this document. All right, here, the eighth advice would be to have discussions with your professors and other graduate students in your field or even outside your field, because being in comparative literature, I ended up talking to people from several different fields. And it's interesting how you can get ideas from other graduate students, even if they're not even in your department. And having discussions with professors, like look for ways to go visit them in their offices and just talk to them about their own research and the stuff that you're interested in to get an idea of, more ideas for what you could come up with a topic. All righty. So I'm going to put you in breakup groups. I have 14 of you. So I think that maybe what I will do is put you in 4 groups. And what you're going to do is you're going to talk about, so some of you may have you're pretty early in your program. So maybe you can talk about what topic attracted you to doing a master's or a PhD and why. And if you've been in your program for a while or are writing your dissertation already, maybe you can talk to the people in your group about how you came up with your topic and how did you know it was promising. So let's see, I think I will put you in, give me 1 second while I, whoops. Hold on. Whoops, sorry. Sorry, I don't know why. Okay. There we go. Let's see. So, okay. So you'll get a message that tells you to join a breakup room. And I'm going to give you about, I think I'm going to give you about 10 minutes because you have about 4 people in your group. And if more people join, then I'll have them connect to you. Okay. Do you have any questions before you go in? Anybody?
No.
Okay, here we go. Oops. Feedback? Let me see. It's hard for me to tell. Okay, so a couple new people joined us. So let me, so there's a couple things I just want to make sure that those of you who just joined us know. And one is that this is being recorded. And the other is that in the chat box, you will find a link to a Google folder that has a handout for today's workshop. So you can open that up and we'll need it from time to time.
So I can't see historical messages on the chat box. It's there we go. Thank you.
Okay. All righty. Oops. Okay, so that's what we just did. I put this quote here. It always seems impossible until it's done. And I think once you get your topic, it starts to feel like this becomes a huge project. And when you start feeling overwhelmed, I want you to remember that many people have gone ahead of you, and that within your departments, you have people that are in the middle writing their dissertations, and you also have people who are like graduating within the quarter. And so be sure to talk to them and get to know them and find out about their experiences, because that will be very helpful. Why does this keep doing this? Whoops. So here, I just wanted to mention, especially for those who just came in, because we are restricted on time, there are a couple things I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. And one of them is establishing priorities and setting personal goals, because Kathy Gossett and Rai Sentencia did workshops on these two things, and they are going to be available to you. I don't know how soon that they'll make them available to you, but they will be there for you to look at. So our next topic that we're going to spend time on is choosing and communicating with your committee. This is probably one of the most important things for you to know about. I know that for me, when I was doing my dissertation or preparing for my exams and writing my prospectus, I felt like this was probably the most like I knew the least about what to do with this than any other thing. So I'm hoping that this will help you as you go through. So Bob Proctor is a world-renowned speaker and a motivational teacher. And one of the things he says is a mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you. And so I want you to think about this when you are choosing your committee, because what you want is a committee that's going to be supportive and that's going to be helping you to be the best writer and researcher that you can be. So there are a bunch of things that you want to think about. The first thing you want to know is make sure that you understand what your committee's responsibilities are. So the first thing, obviously, is they're going to approve your proposal. So that means they're going to spend time with you talking through your ideas about what you want to research. They're going to let you know whether they think it's going to work or not, and maybe offer suggestions on different directions. They're going to guide your research during the time that you're writing your thesis or dissertation. And they're going to judge the quality of your work. That's part of what they're there to do, is to help you make sure that what you're doing is going to work and be well written. So your committee is going to want you to choose something that's original and interesting to them as well as to others in your field. They've done a lot of research in your field, and so they know what's already been written about, and they know what's trending, like if there's a new topic that seems to be coming up. And they're also going to be thinking about your end goal. If you're wanting to become a professor, one of the things they're going to be thinking about is how well will your topic work on the job market? And one of the things I really want to encourage you is to trust their opinion, because they've been in the field longer, and they have a lot of knowledge about what kind of research has already been done. All right. I don't know if you haven't heard of PhD comics, you should look into them because they have some very funny comics. This one is looking at your thesis committee, which really a lot of things that we would say about the thesis and dissertation, they're a lot the same. So with this one, it says your thesis committee, as also known as an impossibly difficult group to get together in one room, but who nevertheless hold your future in their hands, depending on their ability to reach a civilized consensus. So I would say that this is really true in terms of it is very difficult to get your committee to meet all together for a meeting. I think for most people, their committee, I know my committee only met at the very beginning during my oral exams. They probably met before my oral exams to talk about my prospectus, but that was, I think, maybe the only time I ever saw them all together in one room. And I think that's the case for most people. And then the bottom, it says none of them will actually read your entire thesis. And that's not necessarily true, but I know that it can be partially true. So you can expect that your advisor, your main advisor, will probably read your entire dissertation because they have to sign off on it. Your readers, on the other hand, will probably only read the chapter that they're most familiar with in terms of the research. And you want to think here, you know, this is kind of funny, the guru, the adversary, the straw man or woman, the assistant professor, all of these are definitely personalities that come up when you're looking for a committee. So you have to think about this. So choosing your committee. So you'll have to double check your department for the exact number of people, but I think in most departments you have your main advisor, who sometimes is called your director of dissertation, and then you have 2 readers. The most important people, the most important person is going to be that director of your dissertation. And you really want to choose somebody that I refer to as an anchor. This is going to be a person who, one, you trust, you've taken several of their classes, you've had conversations with them in their offices, and you really feel like this person cares about your research and about helping you become the best researcher and writer that you can become. This person is also in charge of making sure that your committee is doing the things that they're supposed to be doing. So in terms of if you have a committee member who, like one of your readers, is taking a really long time to read your chapter, it is the director of your dissertation's job to prod that person and get them to get the work done. They're also the person who should be mediating any disputes that you have with any of your committee members. And they're also there to make sure that you're treated fairly. So this person is really important, and you want to be careful how you choose this person. Don't make the mistake of choosing somebody just because they're well-known and popular in your field. If they're popular in your field and they're a great person to work with, then yes, by all means, try to get them to be your main advisor. But if they're a very difficult person to work with, I would not chance it. So your readers, one of your readers can be outside of UC Davis, but again, check with your department, because I know that in my department, it was possible. I had one colleague who had one of her readers was on the East Coast, and it was somebody she had worked on with a master's thesis and really enjoyed working with that person. The only thing is this does complicate things a little bit when you are, when you're trying to get your stuff read or signed off, because you have to go through other means, you know, more complicated ways of getting them to sign things off. So it can be a problem, but if they're worth it, then definitely see about doing that. Let's see. So obviously you want them to be knowledgeable about your topic. So you want to know what they know about your topic, what kind of research they've done on it. If there's a chance of finding somebody who has a particular, like their research links closely to yours, that could be great, because you guys can have really great conversations and ideas flowing back and forth. On the other hand, there's a trick. It could be tricky because this person might have a stronger opinion about your topic and your work than if they weren't that closely linked to it. know their working style. Now, this is something that's really important. You want to try to take classes with this professor as many times as you can, because that helps you see what kind of teaching style they have and what kind of, like what their personality is like, because that makes a difference, especially with the main advisor. You also, one thing that you want to consider is some professors are really, they're really hands off when it comes to how you conduct your research and how you structure your thesis or dissertation. And then there are others who are very, they very much want to be in control of a lot of the stuff that you're doing. So you need to look at yourself and know what kind of person you are in terms of how your style of working, and make sure that their style is something that you can work with. And the other thing is, if you can, be aware of their relationship with other professors, particularly if there are others that you want to have as readers. You want to make sure that they have a pretty good relationship with one another, because having two people who don't get along on your dissertation committee can cause a lot of problems. And it's something you don't need, because you have enough stress as it is. Talk to grad students who have worked with these professors. I found that when looking for who I wanted to work with, I found that my fellow grad students, especially the ones who were in the program like a year or two more than myself, I found that they were very helpful in helping me know about the professors and their style of working and stuff like that. And lastly, know that your committee members can change at some point if there's good reason to. So if a professor moves to a different university, and I've seen this happen to a couple of grad students where they had chosen a committee member, and about halfway through their dissertation, that that reader or main advisor moved to a different university. The main advisor might be harder to be able to keep that person. Your readers is usually a little easier to keep, but you're likely to have to change the main advisor. And that's one of the reasons you want to make sure that you get to know them, because you want to find out, are they retiring in a year? That's happened to one grad student that I know. Are they planning to take a sabbatical at a particular time when you think you might actually be trying to finish? You want to know this ahead of time so that you can try to gear your timeline to fit what their timeline is. And there have been times when students have had a really difficult time working with a particular committee member, and they've asked that person to they've asked to have that person switched out and another person come in. It's best if you don't have to do this, but I just want you to know that there is a way out of this if it's turning out to not work well. Okay, so I want to put you out in breakout groups again. And some of you I know are still in the beginning of your program, and you haven't chosen a committee yet. So if you haven't, talk about who you are thinking of asking and why. And those of you who have already chosen your committee, tell the others how you chose your committee and why did you choose the particular ones you chose. Okay, so I just want to double check. I had you in it for about 12 minutes last time. Did you find that was too much information, or I mean, not information, sorry, too much time or enough time? Can you guys tell me or put it in the chat?
For our group, it seemed like a perfect amount of time. I think.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? Nobody had too much time?
Our group as well. I think we were just kicked off, and then that's why we were continuing our conversation later. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to probably do another 10 to 12 minutes. And this topic might go a little faster, but who knows? It's good if you guys are chatty, because talking to one another is one of the most productive things you can do as a grad student. So let me go ahead and put you in these groups. I don't know if you'll be with the same people, because I think I'm I think I'm letting them, oh, nope, I can. Let me see if there's any new folks. Nope, I think we're all, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and send you in. Hello. Okay, so as I'm looking at the time, I'm getting a little worried that I have more material than we have time for. So I'm going to the second part of communicating with your committee. I'm going to go through a little faster. Oops. All right. So here, the one thing to understand is that communicating with your committee is really your responsibility. The one thing that I noticed is as soon as my exams were finished and I'd been given an okay with my proposal, I pretty much felt like I had been left all by myself. I felt like I was standing in a room all alone. Because in general, I think most committees will not, the professors in your committee will not come running after you to find out how you're doing or how much progress you've made. They leave it up to you to make sure to come to them when you need them. But I will say that if you establish a routine schedule, particularly with your main advisor, for the first couple of months, you may want to meet them every 2 weeks. And again, this is also going to depend on your main advisor because you'll have to make an agreement with this. But then after that, it'll probably be like every couple of months, depending on how long it takes you to write your thesis or dissertation. With your readers, you probably won't meet with them very often unless you want to meet with them to talk to them about some of the research you're going through. Really, it's important that you respect their time. When you go into meetings with them, they expect you to do the majority of the talking. So you should come with questions and showing, material to be able to show your progress, show them the direction you're thinking of going, asking any questions you have. They will expect you to do most of the talking. Sometimes your meetings will be a half hour, sometimes an hour. It all depends on your main advisor. Again, ask the tough questions, like be willing to be critiqued, because if they don't critique you, then you can't get better. And so you might even want to ask questions like, am I making enough progress? Am I moving fast enough? Or am I communicating well enough with you? Do you need more communication from me? Circulating memos and reports on the meetings, that really is up to you. I didn't do it, but I found that a lot of things that I studied for this workshop said that writing back to your committee members after you had a meeting with them confirms what happened during the meeting, what agreements you guys had made. That keeps things in writing, and that can be really helpful. Also, every couple of months, every 3 months or 4 months, maybe doing a report to all committee members just to kind of update them on where you are with your project. And I wanted to make sure to say, be honest about your end goal, because I discovered that with some of the people that I was, some of us who were writing our dissertations at the same time, I found out that if your professors think you want to become a professor, then they're going to be looking at your thesis or dissertation as if you're going onto the job market. So they're going to be a lot stricter with you about how your dissertation comes out. This is probably more towards those doing the dissertation. If they know that you don't intend to become a professor, they're more likely to not be as strict and to give you a little more freedom with your research and your writing. Because I found that a friend of mine, once she told her committee that she did not want to go on to be a professor, that she was able to finish her dissertation a lot quicker because they had less critique to give her. Not because they didn't like her project, but because they realized that she didn't have to compete with the market, with the job market. Present one chapter at a time to all committee members. This is the recommended way to do it. Some professors, like mine, my main advisor, preferred that all chapters were approved by her before it went on to other committee members. So that's going to depend on them. When you send a chapter to your committee members, make sure that you try to set up a meeting, like say about 2 weeks after you send it to them. Because if you don't, then it could take a lot longer for them to get back to you. And if you set a date, they're more likely to read it on time. They may ask you for longer, like 3 weeks, and that's fine as long as you guys come to an agreement. All right, so what your committee expects from you. One is that you learn how to work independently, that you don't need them to keep asking you where your work is, because they most likely won't do it. But they expect that as a researcher, you are going to be doing your work without needing to be prodded. Keep in contact with them. If they don't hear from you for like 6 months, they will not think you're a serious writer or researcher, that they will doubt whether or not you'll finish. So let them know what's going on. Make constant progress, even if it's slow. It's better to be able to show that you've done something than to not do anything, because they do expect you to keep working and making progress. They would like you to be honest about your progress. So don't lie to them and say, oh yeah, I've done quite a bit. I just have a little more to do before I show it to you. Also, don't tell them that you think you will get the chapter to them in say 2 weeks. Just because I found that I would tell my committee, okay, I'm going to have this to you in 2 weeks. And then the 2 weeks would come and I wasn't ready. And so I found I was putting a lot more stress on myself than I needed to. Be responsive to their advice. This is really important because they are giving you their time, and you have to trust them that they know a lot more about the research. And remain positive even when things are difficult. It is hard to have a positive relationship with your committee if every time you come in, you kind of are the doom and gloom of everything that's going wrong. It doesn't mean that you have to pretend like everything's perfect either, but try to, if you do need to tell them about things that are going on, that you also show that you are looking for ways to improve the situations. Okay, dealing with conflicts, because unfortunately, sometimes they do happen. So be prepared for that, meaning basically nip the problems in the bud. So meaning don't let them fester. If you have a conflict with one of your committee members, try to deal with it right away, because the longer you leave something, you become more resentful, they become more resentful, and it just causes bigger problems. Be professional but assertive about the things that you need, especially if you're not being treated fairly. And hopefully your advisor is your anchor and is going to be able to help you if you feel like you're not being treated fairly by one of your readers. Be willing to make changes you disagree with. You have to remember that your goal is to finish this thesis or finish this dissertation. And so, and when you consider that the majority of theses and dissertations are never read by anybody else except your committee. Once in a while, a grad student might use it in their research, but the reality is very few people will read the dissertation that you turn in. You may turn it into articles or a book later, but the finished product that you turn in to get your degree is not likely going to be read by very many people. And so if you need to make a change that maybe you don't 100% agree with, but it doesn't really change your argument, then try to compromise on that rather than dig your feet in. Get advice from others if there's a conflict. Again, know the chain of command, who you need to go talk to. Oops, sorry, that went a bit fast. Oh goodness, we only have 33 minutes. So I'm gonna do this one pretty quick because I still think that this one's important. And then I will also be giving you materials in that folder. I'll give you the PDF of this presentation so you can go back to it and so that you can look at the stuff I'm not able to get to. Writing your prospectus. So this is, or it's sometimes called a proposal. It could be both. The things you can expect to find in your, to put in there are things like your title. Some disciplines ask for an abstract and some don't. We'll look at some really quickly. The introduction and statement of the problem or gap in knowledge. Review of literature. I'm not going to go over review of literature because Lisa Sperber did two workshops on that today, so they'll be available to you. Methodology, again, how the methodology looks is going to depend on your discipline, significance and implication of the research, overview of chapters, timeline of project, and proposed resources. So I'm going to skip over the title because that's pretty easy and you guys can go back to it. So the abstract, there are two different kind of abstracts. There's a descriptive one that's usually before the project starts, and it gives the purpose or motivation for your project, goals and problems and methodology. The informative one is usually after the project's been finished. So it also includes results and conclusions and the implications for the project, which the descriptive one doesn't. So this was my abstract for my dissertation before I completed it. And so I've just separated out the colors so you can see, and I'll let you read it later. But it has the motivation, the problem, methodology, and I had put in examples of current results of research, so things I already knew about. So this one is from a sociology article. So it's an article by Nikki Lisa Cole, and it's about abstract writing in sociology. So what she did is she separated these into, this is all one abstract. And as you can, oops, sorry, my mouse went the other way. You can read through this and be able to see the how this one's set up. Again, not all disciplines required in the prospectus. The introduction and statement of problem. So this establishes the field of study that you'll be working in. It describes the problem that you're trying to solve or the gap of knowledge that you're trying to fill, and explains how you'll do it. It will often have a list of defined terminology. Like for mine, I needed to explain the difference between reconciliation and mediation, so they understood how I was using it in my dissertation. List of research questions you propose to answer. And it explains, also it explains the limitations of your research, so what you won't do. So the literature review, again, it's just, it shows that you understand there's a conversation with a larger group of expert researchers and establishes the importance of your project. So again, Lisa Sperber did a workshop on this, so you can look at hers. Methodology and timeline. Again, this, it describes how you're going to go about your research. It lists the tasks to be completed, description of how you will accomplish these tasks, a breakdown of chapters, and a timeline for the completion of each of these tasks. Again, the methodology will be different depending on the on your discipline. So for me, I was writing on literature, so my methodology was very short compared to somebody who's maybe doing linguistics and they are working with people and having to gather their data in a different way. They would have a much longer methodology. Reference list, that's just like any other paper that you would write. So we're not going to do this discussion, but I did want to take you to this website, and this is, whoops, sorry. I want to take you to this website. Hopefully this will work. Yep. And you do have the link to this in your, oops, it doesn't look like it. Let me go there. You do have this link in your handout as well. I don't know where it went. There we go. So when you go to this is at Harvard. And the reason I gave this to you is because you can search for example proposals here for your field. And so there's two places, you know, to get, like when I was writing my prospectus, nobody in my department seemed to have a copy of anybody's for me to go by. So I ended up going to the English department and getting one that they had, like they had steps for how to do that. And I think they've improved that since then. But one of the ways that you can do it is just kind of look one up here and see what they typically look like. And you'll see that they basically have the, you know, all the same type of information and the way it's laid out and the amount of each one depends on the discipline. So you can go there to find that. All righty. Okay, so structuring your thesis or dissertation. Oh, so the other thing is I've given you a copy of my prospectus in that that Google folder, so you have that to look at as well. So I wanted to give you, with this one, I was just going to give you some of the advice that I gotten from my my colleagues who did their dissertations around the same time as me. And because the other workshops went over things like writer's block and organization and all that. So my friend Megan said, be sure to choose a topic you really enjoy reading and writing about. And we did talk about that a bit. Oh, this is an important one. Read dissertations of committee members and or of recent graduates in your discipline. So I don't know how well, how necessary it would be to look up your committee members' dissertations. It would be good to maybe look at the books they've written or the articles that they've written, because their dissertations might have been quite a long time ago. But recent graduates in your discipline, this would be really helpful. And I think I put a link to the website that you can, if it's not there, I'll double check to make sure it is there. But you can search for dissertations or theses in your discipline through our library. When stuck, write about being stuck. Basically what she's saying is that, you know, if you're stuck writing, still write, but just write something. And this one's important to expect a need to reorganize and be willing to change the scope of your project, because your project is going to change as you do more research, as you learn more things, and as you organize and reorganize. It will look quite a bit different from your prospectus. So don't expect it to stay exactly the same. It's not likely. The other is finding at least one writing buddy. I've also put a link to the graduate studies department has writing retreats that you can go on. And there's a writing group called Shut Up and Write, which I think I also put a link in for you. The more you have people that you can talk to or get together and write. I used to meet with some friends and we would talk for about 15 minutes and then we write for about an hour, and then maybe go and have dinner or lunch afterwards. So it's nice. Dissertation and thesis defense. Basically, this is going to depend on your department. I know that mine and the French department did not have defenses because we defended our prospectus instead. They shouldn't let you get to your defense unless they absolutely are sure you're ready. And then basically at that point, you'd be just presenting your findings and you know that they know your stuff is good by that point. And another reason to choose a committee member wisely is just to make sure you don't choose somebody who's going to want to needle you and ask you all difficult questions. Bottom line, by the time you get to your defense, you should be able to pass it, because they should know that your stuff is good by then. All right, taking care of yourself. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was imposter syndrome, because this I know was this happened to a lot of people in graduate school when I was there 5 years ago, and I'm pretty sure it's pretty similar. So 70% of successful people have feelings associated with imposter syndrome, which is like fear of failure, anxiety, self-doubt, and perfectionism. I am going to put this link in your handout because we're running out of time. We only have 23 minutes, but I wanted to show you what else I have here for you, and then I want to see if anybody has any questions. I'm going to go through all of this a little. I'm just going to pass all this and let you read this on your own. Sorry. I thought I would have more time. So some strategies, improving your time management. This is probably one of the most important things that you can do for yourself, is to get better with your time management, especially if you have a family. It's really hard to raise children when you're writing a dissertation or a thesis. So you do have to make sure you manage your time well enough so that you feel like you have time with your family, and at the same time for yourself. So break up large tasks into smaller pieces, allow time for family and friends, Include alone time for thinking. That's one thing I realized I was missing and that I had to make time for, because you can't do really well on your research if you don't have time to think. If you're part of a religious community, stay faithful to your meetings to get that spiritual refreshment, and ask for help whenever you need it. And remember to count your blessings. So on this page, and I think I might have put these in your handout. If I didn't, I'll make sure they're there. But these are just, Dr. Robert Emmons talks about gratitude and how it can heal and energize us. He talks about keeping, I don't know if he talks about keeping a gratitude journal, but I know I've heard a lot about that. Learning how to do breathing exercises really can help. And you don't have to do it for very long sometimes before you feel the benefit of it. Okay. And bottom line, a good dissertation or thesis is a done dissertation or thesis. So always remember that this is an exercise for what you will be likely writing in the future, such as books or journal articles. But you want to get it done. So we're not looking for perfection when doing these. All right, I'd like to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask me about? It can be about anything, even if it's something I skipped over. No questions at all?
I have a question.
Sure.
I would like to ask about, I mean, it's not something that I'm hopeful that would happen in the dissertation phase, but let's say that you are very strong in including maybe like a cultural material or having a certain argument part of your dissertation, but then, or maybe one of your chapters, but then your main advisor says otherwise, or to maybe rethink that, but it's something that you want to have there. Like, how would you manage that, or
do you mean
that
do you mean that you want this to be included in that chapter and your advisor is telling you not to include it?
Yeah, and it could be because of time, or maybe it's not fitting in their mindset of something that should be part of your argument.
I mean, to be perfectly honest, if it's not critical to your argument, it's just something that you really enjoyed writing about and you thought it was, you know, interesting for your readers to have. If it's not critical to your argument and your advisor really wants you to leave it out, I would just leave it out, because the point of this is just to get this done. And it's something that if you ever write an article on that chapter, you can always put it back in, because then it'll be, you know, your own. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yes. All right, thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? So before any of you leave, I'm going to put a link to the to an evaluation sheet that we need you to do before you leave. Hold on one second. I'm having a trouble getting out of my, there we go. And you guys can continue to ask questions. That's totally fine. Oops. Not the one I needed. Sorry, guys. Any other questions I can help you guys with?
I thought this was really comprehensive. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Not
good.
a question, but just wanted to thank you as well.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so here's the link to doing the evaluation, and if you wouldn't mind doing that before you sign off, that would be great. And I will stick around if anybody wants to stick around and talk. I'm willing to just hang out here until you guys are ready to go, because I know I breeze through a lot of stuff, so I'm willing to chat about anything that you're wondering about.
I had a question about the actual exam. Like, maybe if you could share some insight about what that is exactly. I don't think I've had too many conversations about that whole process.
Are you talking about the qualifying exams?
Yeah, or qualifying exams, or for some of us, we have like I think it's like just like a defense of our if it's a capstone project, we'll have to talk about that, and it's called an exam.
Okay, so I know with my department, we had 3 written exams, and then we had to defend our proposal, which sounds similar to what you're saying. it's, I'm not quite, because I'm not familiar with your discipline and your department. I'm not sure how well I could answer the kind of question you're, what you're looking for. I know that for me, it took quite a long time, and I did have, now your committee for your exams does not need to be the same as for your dissertation. It's nice when it is, because then it's working with the same people. But I know that when I did my exams, I was with different people than I was with my dissertation committee. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question. Are you just wanting to know more about the process?
Yeah, like once you're actually in it, what was that like?
So it took several, I think it was 2 or 3 quarters that we took of just studying the material. And then we had ours was take home. So we were allowed to do, we had 24 hours to do each written one. And I don't know if your department would, nowadays you probably would. So our 3 written ones were at home, 24 hours for each one. And then they would grade, the committee would grade it, and then they would send it back to you to let you know whether or not you passed. And then we had the oral exam, and the oral exam was basically, it was going over some of the questions from your written exams, and then it was defending your proposal. And I mean, it's interesting because going through it, you really stress out about it because you feel like it's this big, huge thing. But your professors generally are, generally they won't send you to the exams unless they think you're ready. So it's very rare for somebody to not pass their exams. And by the time you defend your proposal, you've gone through with your dissertation committee, you've gone through that prospectus several times. And so even that, they're going to ask you to kind of, justify your project, but they should already be ready for, for giving it to you. I mean, that's what basically I'd heard, and that's pretty much what happened with everybody that I knew of. Does that make sense?
That's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, that's part of their job, is to make sure that you're ready for the, for the exams. Anything else?